Welcome to the Illuminations Media Network.
And welcome back to the Illuminations Media Network. This is Tamara Tayesa, your host, and I'm so glad you've joined me once again here on the Illuminations Network. Today we have a very special guest, Reverend Michael Carter. Oh my goodness, I have been so excited about this conversation that we're going to have today, and you will be too. We're going to be speaking about extraterrestrials and the Holy Bible. Reverend Michael Carter's book, Alien Scriptures. And we'll be right back with Reverend Carter after this brief message.
Looking for real change in your life? Look no further than Gaiam TV's Spiritual Growth.
For human consciousness to evolve, the conversation must deepen.
A streaming media service to explore spirituality and personal growth that you can access anytime, anywhere.
You realize it's something that organically unfolds from the field of your own being.
And I think that makes people switch from sort of focusing on what don't I have to what do I have.
With original programming, uplifting films, and exclusive interviews with modern spiritual leaders.
Everyone has the capacity for genius in some area of their life. Everyone has a powerful destiny.
So when people think that this is it, this physical world is all there is, they're very, very wrong.
We're living a very limited life. Gaiam TV offers the tools to help you be a better you. Gaiam TV, Spiritual Growth.
And welcome back. We're here with Reverend Michael Carter. He's a reverend, he is a writer, he's a speaker, and he is an authority on ufology and religion. Reverend Michael Carter, welcome to the Illuminations Media Network.
Tamara, it is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. Well, we have so much to cover. We definitely want to get deep into your book because
we have a lot, yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. But before we do that, because you're brand new to the Illuminations family, I just have to have you share a bit about yourself.
Well, I am from Baltimore, Maryland. Originally lived in New York for almost 30 years. Now live here in the gorgeous mountains of western North Carolina. I did not get into this subject I got into it late in life. I was raised by a Baptist family, my parents, and loved it. But coming up, it started not to fit. I started asking more questions, going here and there, intellectually and even physically going to different churches and different denominations. I'm not a Trekkie or a Star Wars person, which surprises some people, but and we'll go into later, obviously, some of my own personal experiences that led me to write the book and to explore on a deeper level off-world intelligences and their possible interactions with our ancestors in the Bible. I am a father, and I have a wonderful and delightful 8-year-old daughter, and I have a very lovely wife who's also a clergy person, and life is full. I serve a Unitarian Universalist congregation here in the mountains, and life is progressing well.
Well, it certainly is progressing well for you, Reverend Carter. As we spoke earlier, we both have it in common that we have this deep search for spirituality, studying various belief systems and really delving deeply into them. You've actually trained in theological studies and seminary there in New York.
Yeah, I'm very proud. I graduated from Union Theological Seminary, which is one of the top seminaries in the country. I graduated from there in 2000, class of 2000. Prior to that, I attended in New York. I attended an interfaith seminary, which really got me in very interested in comparative religion studies, and I attended this particular seminary for 2 years. And I mean, I really, it really opened me up to different paths and different ways of looking at things. I am a healer. I can't say it's Reiki anymore. I teach Reiki, but because of my contacts with my star visitors, whatever energy is coming through my hands is really, really powerful. And so, I use that. I used to work as a chaplain in a hospital. I have other friends who are healers, and one of them is a Reiki master, and she was telling me, I was working on her the other day, and she said, that's not Reiki. She said, I don't know what you're telling people it is, but it's not Reiki. It's something much stronger. But whatever it is, I just thank God for it, and I use it to help and to heal and to help people evolve, myself as well.
That's beautiful. Yeah. All of that energy, whatever you call it, we know that it's definitely coming from that divine creator. And it's excellent that you're using your hands, your body, your mind, and your word as part of that healing. Well, not only are you deep into the spirit, you also work in the civic world. You're trained as an anti-racism trainer.
Yes.
And recognized by President Clinton for your efforts.
Yes, I know. I can. Well, yeah. You never know what's going to happen. When I joined the Unitarian Universalist denomination, I moved away from the baptism of my youth. I moved away from the more, I hate to put it this way, but us, them type of theological structure where I'm saved, you're not. And I found that the Unitarian Universalist philosophy fit my philosophy, which is more inclusive. And they were training anti-racism trainers and diversity trainers. And so I was one of those people, and I was preaching a sermon on anti-racism as a topic, and there happened to be someone in the audience who was from the White House. And they sent me a letter. They sent me 2 letters, actually. One from them telling me how much they had loved the work and the workshop I had done and what have you. And then I got one from President Clinton. And this was during the time when he was trying to do an initiative on race. And I'm very proud of that, very, very proud of that. And that was another one of the highlights of my life. I look at the work I'm doing, and being involved with different star races because they have different races as well. And so for me, it's a continuation of that work in the sense of how do we navigate, negotiate, and come to grips with our fears and misunderstandings about the other. And for me, it's just a continuation of the work. I mean, obviously, we still have problems on this planet. But for me, because there are at least 3 different races I've been in contact with that are off-world intelligences, they are different as well. But they seem, for the most part, to not have the hang-ups that we have here about difference.
Now, Reverend Michael, why do you think that's the case? I mean, here, I'm an African American, and certainly everyone who is an African American is multiracial. That's just what that means here, especially in the United States and probably throughout the diaspora. But we all have dealt with those issues of diversity, even prejudice. But why do you think we Earthlings here have those hang-ups and those difficulties, and our star brothers and sisters have overcome that?
Well, I think and this is all speculation on my part, but I feel that, first of all, you come into the world and you're implanted, you're imprinted. Things are imprinted in you once you get here. The world is a certain way, and you have to learn to adapt to that. And so, some ways, I think our incarnations as Earth people, we have to unlearn some of the things we've been taught. In other words, we forget who we are. Some people would say we forget who and whose we are. But however we want to frame it, we forget that we are much, much more powerful than we're told we are. And so there's almost like an amnesia that comes along. And we start to believe in scarcity. We start to believe that if you get more, I have less. We start to believe that if you're Tea Party and I'm Democratic, or if you're gay and I'm straight, we forget that we're all connected. And what I do to you, I do to myself. Surely this is the message of all the saints and avatars that have come to this planet, human and or otherwise. And so we have to unlearn. Sometimes that's more difficult. We have to unlearn some of the things we've learned because they were all fear-based. When we come out of our mother's womb, as we're growing up, and people start to tell us who we are, we forget that that's their interpretation of who we are, but that we're always much, 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 much more. And getting past the fear. The message that I've gotten from some of my star friends have been, what they've said to me is that one of the largest obstacles for them in dealing with us is getting past our fear, because what we don't understand, we fear, and what we don't understand and fear, we will destroy. And so every day, whether it's A Course in Miracles or the teachings of Jesus, or whether it's the Buddha, or even more secular messages that we get, because you don't have to be. Some of the most spiteful people I know are religious people, but that we are connected, and that what I do to you, I do to me, and we don't have to think alike to love alike.
So very true. Well spoken. Well, we can definitely hear that you are definitely a minister, and I imagine those sermons are heartfelt and stirring. But
Thank you.
You're also a writer, and a prolific writer. Certainly you've written a wonderful book that encapsulates all of your own personal experiences with the Star brothers and sisters, but you've also gone deep into a lot of ufology that's always been here. The research is just really astounding, and I'm really excited. So we're going to really go deep into all of those. But, first, I want to talk about your personal experiences. You have actually had some, I won't say that they've been abductions, but you've had some connections with those otherworldly or other dimensions.
I do. I have, and I continue to. To this day, even though there have been time when there were years in between, my first visit as an adult, because when I was a kid, I had some visitors of high strangeness, looking back now, but I had come back from the pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tulum in Cancun, there on the Yucatan. And again, I want to reiterate to the folks listening that I was not a science fiction person. I wasn't reading science fiction. I wasn't a Trekkie. I'm still not, or Star Wars person. But I had the party line going there, man. I remember someone asking me in Baltimore, where I was born and raised, you don't believe in UFOs and life on other planets? And I said, no. And they seemed astounded. And they said, why not? And I said, because it's not in the Bible. And here I am, later in my life, arguing that I was wrong. Coming back from the Yucatan, living in New York City. I went to a party one evening. I had gotten back from Mexico, and I kind of wanted to show off my tan. It was like 85 degrees there. I came back to New York. It was in the 20s. So I kind of wanted to gloat a little bit, and a friend of mine asked me to come to a party down in Times Square, which I did, but I didn't stay long. I made a brief appearance, a cameo appearance, as it were, and no beverages, no adult beverages were imbibed, nothing like that. I think I had like a plate of potato salad. I stayed for about an hour and a half because I was really more tired than I thought. And I got on the subway, and I lived on the Upper West Side, so I went home, and my girlfriend at the time, who later became my first wife, she was there, and we went to sleep. And I got up. I don't even know to this day why I got up, because I don't remember having to go to the bathroom or anything. And there was an individual at the edge of my bed who had a aluminum foil, the best way I could describe it, kind of jumpsuit. I'm going to say he. It could have been a she. The energy, looking back, I felt it was a he. He was chalk-colored, had the pear-shaped head and the black kind of Ray-Ban wraparound eyes, and the individual stared at me, and I stared at it, thinking I was going to have a cardiac arrest. My heart was beating so fast, and so it was just terror. And so I did what any other macho man would do, and I'm being facetious because I am far from macho. I pulled the covers up over my head. And I'm not ashamed to tell you. And I was scared. And I heard this whoosh, whoosh, this whooshing sound, and it felt like I was outside. I was not. My brain. I was like, am I outside? And I pulled the covers down, and I was in my room, and it was like this. It was just silence.
Wow.
I told my girlfriend. I said, "My God," because she would not wake up during this time, and it kept happening. Every full and new moon for 8 months, 6-8 months, maybe a little longer. I was afraid to turn the lights off. Even today, sometimes to this very day, I may keep the light on until the last minute. Now, I don't use the word abduction because I don't feel like I was abducted. Was it terrifying? You bet. And it took me a while to get used to it. But nothing was ever done. There were some times when I remember one time it was two individuals came, short, like the ones I've spoken to you about, and they walked over, and they don't really walk. They kind of glide. I can't even explain it. And one of them stuck a needle in the crown of my head, and in the back, in where the neck meets the back of your head. What's back there? You know what I'm talking about, the back, yeah. And it hurt. It really hurt. And but I noticed that my intuitive capabilities were really stronger. And I was talking to a friend of mine. Now, I did go to a psychiatrist, and I go through this in the book, as you know, because I thought I was fearing for my sanity. I really thought I was crazy. So I was talking to a friend of mine who had these experiences since childhood, and said, you have to set some boundaries. You have to tell them what you will and will not do. Now, it doesn't work all the time. I've heard people say, well, it doesn't work when I do it. But when I remember standing in my underwear in the middle of my bedroom screaming with a golf club in my hand and saying, you can't do this to me. You're violating. What are you, and when they came, because they didn't stop, they would talk to me in pictures at the beginning, and they would paralyze me. I couldn't move, but they would show me pictures of almost as if saying, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay, are you satisfied? This is what we're doing. So in my case, they did listen. But these experiences really got me going into, because I'm a clergy person, I'm always interested in the inner life, if you will. I'm not a propulsion systems person, back engineering. I mean, I know all that stuff goes on. I don't, obsess about how they fly their craft or whatever. What really floats my boat, if you will, is how does one evolve? How does one go back to their daily living? How does one negotiate, navigate, being on this planet and being involved with other people after you've had these experiences?
That was my next question.
Yes.
Because that must have changed you on the deepest of levels.
It has changed me on the deepest of levels.
View of reality, let alone your
yes, it did. It did change my whole. It changed my whole view of religion. It changed my whole view of spirituality, because they're not always the same thing. It changed my whole view of life. Period. One of the things a couple of the things that I can say. Now, I had to work. Now, it wasn't just they touched me and all of a sudden I was, the person that I wanted to be, and I'm still trying to be evolving and what have you. But I live my life less fearfully now. I'm more willing to say I don't need to be right. The human ego is really, we were talking about Dr. Beckwith, and a wonderful phrase he used to use, that the ego was edging God out, EGO.
Right.
But I live my life. I'm really, I'm getting more of a grip on my ego. I'm much more apt to say I'm sorry, or will you forgive me? I'm much more willing to be vulnerable. I'm more willing to love and to be loved. And, yes, I've been through therapy. I've been through meditation practices. I've been, through regression, of course. When I started having these visits, I went to the late Bud Hopkins, who was a friend and colleague, a wonderful regression therapist by the name of Dr. Gene Mundy. They've since gone on to life after life. But, so I just started to evolve. I started to peel the onion. I started to look at who am I anyway? And at the top of the show, that's the journey. That's the hero's journey. That's the shero's journey. And I started to get what Joseph Campbell had said, that when you're on a spiritual journey, or any journey, and which to me they're all spiritual one way or the other, but when you're on a journey and your goal looks like it's getting further and further away, hopefully you'll get it that the journey is the goal.
Right.
The journey is the goal. And I started to realize that it's the type of person that I'm becoming on the journey. Not so much if there's a there for me to get to. It reminds me of Dr. King saying that peace is not the goal of humanity. Peace is not the goal. I mean, peace is not the goal. Peace is the tool that we use to achieve our goals.
Right, right.
Very different paradigm.
Yeah, it's about that experience and the unfoldment that takes place on the way. Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Now, Reverend Carter, and I know you asked me to call you Michael, but I have so much respect for you. And
listen, I've been called worse tomorrow, so anything you call me is okay.
I'll try to remember. All right, Michael. Now, imagine this.
Okay.
Imagine that every angel that we've read about in the Bible was actually an extraterrestrial. Imagine that Jesus was one of these star brothers and sisters. And forgive me, anybody who's listening who might see this as disrespectful, but I'm just painting a picture. I mean, if we were to do that, what would change if we were to see these entities that are in the Bible from an interdimensional or extraterrestrial light?
Well, okay, it's a great question. Of course, this is what my whole book is about. But it depends on where you are on your journey. When I first started talking about this work tomorrow, I wouldn't tell about my experiences. I was in the closet, as it were, And so my first publisher said to me, was a little mom and pop publisher out in Arizona. She said, "You need to tell people your story." And I was afraid to, but I had to walk through that fear. What would change? It depends where you are. For me, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying that every off-world intelligence that is visiting us wants to sing Kumbaya and hold hands. There are more evolved and less evolved beings in the universe. That includes us. But for me, the message that I have been getting is one of love, which resonates with where I happen to be coming from in this incarnation on planet Earth at this time. Now, there are other people who have met other entities and who have said, I've been abducted, there have been anal probes, sperm was taken, ovum was taken, and I have no doubt that those things happen, but that's just not my experience. And because of that, people have become a little more fearful, and they kind of paint the brush. Well, all aliens are like that, and they don't like to be called aliens, by the way. Not even human beings want to be called aliens from Latin countries, but you get my drift. And so it depends on where you are. Now, when I was coming up, the church and Orthodox Christianity was saying that these beings didn't exist. Now they've said, 15, 20 years later, they do exist. We'll grant you that. But they're all demonic. They're the fallen angels. So again, now, okay, we say they exist, but because of our ignorance and fear, they're all demons. They're all black people are all this, gay people are all that, poor white people are all that, because we don't understand. And it's just easier to paint a brush and put people in stereotypes. And so, again, the answer to your question would be it depends on where that person is when they get this information and where they are. Now, we just heard 2 days ago, and this has been going on for a while, that Pope Francis said that we could baptize, that the Catholic Church could baptize even, as he calls them, little green men, that they too have souls and that they need to be baptized. And people are talking about disclosure. When are things going to be disclosed? We're in disclosure now. It's just not coming from the White House. All these pictures on the internet, now all of them aren't fake. We have disclosure now. When the Vatican comes out, and they've been doing this for several years now, when they're talking about life on other planets, that Catholicism would not be affected. When you have military people like Clifford Stone, who's a wonderful man, who was at Roswell. You have these people coming out, disclosures happening right in front of us, but because it's not happening the way we want it to, or the way we think it should, we're missing the boat. I don't even engage people, for the most part, who want to argue if life on other planets exists. Not because I think I'm grand, not because I'm being arrogant, but we are so far past that, we know they exist. 50% of the American public believes that we're being lied to by our government and that there are off-world intelligences. The governments of Australia, of Britain, of France, of course, of Mexico, of Brazil, they've released most of their files on extraterrestrial life and UFOs. Now, we're slow to do it here for lots of reasons, but disclosure is happening. And if we're still talking about, do you really think aliens exist or whatever, we've just missed the boat.
It's so very true, so true. Now, in your book, you highlight, old evidence. There are scriptures that actually speak directly. We talk about Ezekiel,
yes,
and the wheel.
Yes, that whole chapter there, the first chapter when he's on the River Chabar and he describes the craft. There's a wonderful book by, you can go online and Google the spaceships of Ezekiel. Joseph Blumrich, Josef as in Frank Blumrich, wrote a book. He was a NASA engineer, and he wrote a book, and he took the description of what Ezekiel says he saw, and he drew what he saw. What he says is the ship that most likely what Ezekiel saw. You touched on some things. Angels. It comes from the Greek word angelos, which means messenger. Doesn't mean they have wings. Now, I'm not saying for people out there who've had mystical experiences, if you've seen angels with wings, so be it. But I believe our ancestors were saying that these beings could fly. Nowhere in the Bible does it say they have wings. When the three messengers called, one of them called the Lord, with Abraham and Sarah, not only do they display psychic abilities because they tell Sarah that she's going to have a child even though she doesn't believe it, but, Abraham gives them food to eat. These are not wispy kind of ethereal beings. They're flesh and blood. They eat. They drink. But if we look at Genesis chapter 6, now this is actually they must make love like we do, because it says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair and had wives among them, and the women gave birth to giants. Well, they must have done it the old-fashioned way, because the women got pregnant. And now, we could say that these 200 fallen angels, and it doesn't say that there, but if you go into the book of Enoch, the book of Enoch really goes into great depth about that passage in Genesis chapter 6. You get the names of some of the, I call them star people, and you get the whole story there. There's also a book that was taken out of the Bible called the Book of Jubilees, and they talk about these angels, and they're called the Watchers. I think what else is important is there are many things. We won't cover it all today, but the Exodus story. First of all, what's so poignant about that, Tamara, is that there's no Jewish religion until the Exodus. Right. And of course, Christianity comes out of Judaism, because what? Jesus was a Jew. But we have the Hebrew people after the Exodus, after going through the Red Sea, they are following the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. And the pillar of cloud by day is an intelligent craft that they follow, so it's in the sky. It stops when they camp underneath of it at night. There's some type of food called manna that is dropped down from the craft. In the daytime, and we have a lot of UFO sightings in the daytime where there's either a cloud as camouflage or there's a mist behind the ships. At night it glows, so it's the pillar of fire, and they follow this craft for 40 years. 40 years. Then, and we can get more into that, because that also made me rethink my conception of God, and we can get into that. But that's it. So now we have Ezekiel. We have the Exodus story. And so now we have Judaism, and we have all these laws. There were 613 commandments. They narrowed it down to 10. We have the book of Leviticus. There's all these laws. And what's significant is that those laws only have to do with other Hebrews. You don't sleep with your neighbor's wife while he's away on business. You don't steal. You don't murder. They say thou shalt not kill, but in Hebrew it's translated thou shalt not murder. You don't covet your neighbor's belongings. But see, that only was for, you stay away from the uncircumcised ones, the Gentiles, the unclean ones. But remember, when people say, what are you talking about? That's for everybody. No, it's not for everybody. Because if it was meant for everybody, why do the Hebrews go into the land of Canaan, where people already live, men, women, and children, and kill them? Because God sent me there to kill men, women, and children. I'm not making it up. Read the Bible, and when they go into the land of Canaan. And so you see why some Native Americans, some of them have a problem with Christianity, because that happened here. We come here, God said we could have this land, this is our land, and so we commit genocide. And there are other places in the Bible, and I don't want to get into all of them now. We don't have the time. But when we go to the Jesus story, we know that stars don't fly across the heavens and shine lights down on mangers. We know that. If that happened, you want to talk about. We have the three wise men from the east, and they follow this star. And the star leads them to where this child is, and it shines a light down. And so for me, if your daddy is not human and your mother is, that means you're not fully human. You're not fully human.
Right.
And so Gabriel, he's all in the Quran as well. But wherever Gabriel goes, women get pregnant. That's a great job he has. Wherever you see Gabriel, there's someone. And these men they're all male children. We have Gabriel visited Jesus' cousin John the Baptist, and he visits Elizabeth. He's also in the Quran. But and Jesus had said, "My kingdom is not of this world."
Certainly
He
did.
had said that. My kingdom is not of this world. And it would explain a lot of the miracles that he's done. Are they miracles, or are they just the laws of nature and physics that we don't yet understand?
Yes, high science.
And when he's in front of Pilate and John, and he won't answer Pilate. And Pilate is the Roman procurator. I mean, this is a powerful man. And he's saying to Jesus, you don't get it, man. You don't want to talk to me? Don't you know that I have the power to put you to death or let you go free? And what does Jesus say? He says, you have no power over me unless it was given to you from above. I could call on my Father now, and 12 legions of angels, 12 legions of messengers would appear. You have no power over me. And so if we're going to take these things seriously, and every religion, whether it's the Cherokee and Native American religion, or which that lineage is in me, we talk about beings from the Pleiades coming to me. Whether it's even Buddhism has its stories of, and of course Hinduism. But there's always messengers from the stars who bring us or try to show us a better way of living. Again, not all of them are our best friends. Okay. And that's a given. I'm not, just singing Kumbaya as I'm saying. But when I look at the Bible, when I look at the book of Isaiah in chapter 40, verse 22, this is the New Revised Standard Version. It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. How does Isaiah, or whoever wrote this book, how does he know that the earth is a circle? I was taught that until Columbus, everything was flat. People believe that. But how does this person writing 5,000 years ago know that the earth is a sphere and that its inhabitants are like grasshoppers? That means that's a view from when you're up in the air looking down. In Job chapter 9, verse 8, this is the Hebrew translation. Chapter 9, verse 9. The Lord is saying to Job, who made the bear and Orion and the Pleiades? Who made that? And so I'm like, well, they're the Pleiades are in there again. These are star systems. In Job again, chapter 38, verse 31, can you tie cords to the Pleiades? Can you undo the reins of Orion? And so, we read over stuff and we just don't look at it. But it's right there. I'm not making it up.
That's right. And we all know about Zecharia Sitchin. Now, many have their opinions about him.
I met him. I had lunch with him when he was alive. Yeah.
Oh, please tell us about that conversation.
Well, he was gracious enough to meet me. He lived about 7 blocks from me, and up on the upper 80s on the Upper West Side, and we met. We met in like a little what do you call it? Just a little restaurant near him. We had a burger, that kind of thing, and so. But he was a very unassuming individual. At that time, I wanted to hear more about Jesus, and he was a Jewish man, and he wasn't a religious Jewish man, and I don't think he really wanted. He just said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you about that. I said, "Are you writing anything about that?" At that time, he was working on his book Divine Encounters, and he just made the case, and I have at that time almost all of his writings, that the Anunnaki, as he called them, were here, that they were going to return. This was, he talked about, in his opinion, the mistranslation of the mistranslations of the First Testament, which we call the Old Testament, and that's where he was. He was on a mission. I was just very impressed with him, and I was just I let him do all the talking. I was just soaking it up. And I think we were there for about an hour tops. And he wrote me a letter. I wrote him a letter, thank you, which I still have. And, I was just very fortunate his writings got me going. Another colleague, a retired Presbyterian minister, Dr. Barry Downing, he got me going back in 1968. He had written a book called The Bible and Flying Saucers. So here we have a Presbyterian minister writing about the possibility. The other people, Morris K. Jessup, he died back in the 50s mysteriously, some would say. He wrote a book called UFOs and the Bible. And he started to explore. A woman by the name of Reverend Virginia Brasington wrote a book called The Bible and Flying Saucers back in the 50s, and she's from where I am now, in Asheville, North Carolina. And so it just gave me courage and all these people were tying it to religion because that was my interest.
Right, and all these people, much like yourself, are definitely soldiers out there in the front lines. You're stepping out of the status quo, and you're making people think twice and ask questions.
Well, I also want to say this too, because I am a man of color, and because I am a contactee or experiencer, and because I'm a clergy person, it's a different voice. Because when I was going to these conferences, and there are many reasons for it, but you would not see many people of color.
Right.
And part of that is cultural. Part of that is who's going to go out there and say, I've seen people from other worlds. It's partly that. But our voice is not really heard. And so hopefully, and I've had people write me after they've seen me on, or they heard me on Coast to Coast, or they've seen me on Beyond Belief, or on Ancient Aliens, and they have, hey, I watch that show all the time. It's great to see you. I've even had white brothers and sisters say, when I was on Nourish Coast to Coast, a guy came up, he said, I'm calling from Appalachia. He said, I am so happy to see an African-American talking about this. It made me feel good. He said, and I want to hear more from you. So it's just another voice to lend to the conversation.
Yes. And you've been out there speaking. You have, been on, as you said, you've been on George Norrie's Beyond Belief. You've been on Coast to Coast. You've been on the Sci-Fi channel, Steven Spielberg's production of Abduction Diaries.
Yes.
Many. But you've also been on Ancient Aliens. Now,
and I've been on Tamara's show as well.
Yes, indeed. You have been on the
So I've been there now.
And you'll be back, too. Now, a lot of us have been wondering, if Ancient Aliens is going to continue.
Yeah, they started the 7th season. They did. I got a call from them. I'm hopefully I can get back on. But, yeah, they started a 7th season, and they're working on it now.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
A lot of people are concerned that they may not be able to keep up with the material, constantly creating new, but there's always new material. And
it's always new material. Yeah.
And like yourself, there are always going to be new people that are stepping up and coming out of the closet, if you will.
Yeah. And I encourage people to read the book, I mean, it's on Amazon. I don't know if it still is. It certainly was for several months. It was number one on Amazon on the topic of UFOs. And you can get it on Amazon. You can get the Kindle or Nook version. I think it's like $4.99. It's like it's less than $10 if you buy the paperback. It's like $9.89 or something. Or you can go to my website, which is michaeljscarter.com, and you can write me, but you could get it that way as well.
Yeah. And it's an excellent read, everybody, because Reverend Michael here writes just as he speaks in plain English so that you can understand it and you can really get it. You definitely want to read Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Bible, most definitely. Well, this has been a blast. This has been an incredible blast, and I know we do have to wind down because we definitely don't have all day.
I know. I wanted to talk about the concept of God and that kind of thing. But we can do that next time.
We certainly can. We want to talk about that. We both have a love of ancient Egypt. I mean, everything.
Oh, my goodness, yes, please.
That certainly ties in. But, yeah, let's schedule that. Let's make sure that we do get together again and bring you back on to the family, because I know that everybody's going to be looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, too. I wanted to, just because I'm not saying there is no God. Believe me. And if I believed there wasn't no God, I was no God, I would say that. But I also want to talk about those places in the Bible that had me change my concept of God. Well, of course, my visits did, but I believe that this God in the Old Testament may be the commander of a ship as opposed to a very loving deity, if you would.
Well, Michael, we've got about 5 minutes left. I'd love it if you touch on that.
Well, let me do this. And this is where my colleague Barry Downing and we differ, because he says, Michael, you want your God to be warm and fuzzy, but I can't help but get past. I can't get past what kind of God would kill the firstborn children of Egypt? What kind of God would kill people because they didn't believe in them? And so when we look at the God who wants to drown, the commander of the ship who wants to drown everyone and start all over again, when we look at this wrathful deity that says, go into Canaan and kill men, women, and children and dash their heads against stones. And I'll give you an example here, 2 examples very quickly. Jeremiah, what chapter am I in? This is the Hebrew version, so not making chapter 13, verse 14. Then the Lord God of Israel says, I will smash them one against the other, parents and children alike, declares the Lord. No pity, no compassion or mercy will stop me from destroying them. And I'm like, do I really want to get down on my knees and pray to someone who needs some anger management? When I look at, here's one for you, and I'll get this, and I know we have to sign off. Ezekiel 4, verse 12. He is telling Ezekiel to eat human excrement. Here we go. You're not going to hear this on Sunday. He's telling Ezekiel, eat it as a barley cake. You shall bake it on human excrement before their eyes. So, said the Lord, shall the people of Israel eat their bread, unclean, among the nations to which I will banish them. And I read that and I said, oh, okay, that's just a metaphor. But then the next verse got me going. Then I said, I being Ezekiel, but Lord God, my person was never defiled, nor have I eaten anything that died of itself, or was torn by beasts from my youth until now. Nor has foul flesh entered my mouth. In other words, I keep kosher. He answered me, this is the Lord, he says, see, I allow you cow's dung instead of human excrement. Prepare your bread on that. Oh. And now in the King James Version, which is the worst version you could have because it makes all the biblical characters sound like they're in a Shakespearean play, they don't say excrement, they say cow's dung. But It's right there. And you have to ask. And, wait a minute now, what? And I just got past that, well, the Lord's ways are bigger than my ways. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if telling another human being to eat excrement is what gods tell people to do. I don't know if a God should tell you. Now, we can also argue, okay, well, that's just what the guy wrote down. But then you can't have it both ways. If the Bible says what it means and means what it says, how do you account for those stories?
Right, and I don't even see any metaphor that you could twist into that.
No, I tried to turn my mind into a pretzel to do that, and I couldn't. And so I just said, you know what? This God is not a God. Now, to them, to our ancestors, they were gods because they had all that technology.
Exactly. That's the point. So let's say that that's a God with little g.
Well, no, let's not even go there to confuse people. Let's just say that is an extraterrestrial. Right. Let's call it what it is. And to our ancestors who were ignorant at the time, and still that's why we had to have rules for them to live by, Listen, if we went to some tribe in the rainforest, and my God, if I could go back in time and I pulled out my iPhone,
right?
They would say that's godlike. I can call you. I got a flashlight in it. I can compute on it. I can tell you what day it is. I can write on it. That technology to them would be godlike. It's godlike to us. Yeah, because we worship technology in this culture.
Mm-hmm. So very true.
Yeah.
Okay, last few seconds. One thing that you would want to share with our listeners that could just transform their lives and help them to diminish that fear.
Well, you know what? All I could do is just say this: that whatever you believe in, whether you want to say God is love or whatever, that's what holds the glue together. And love unites. It does not divide. And you can tell people by their fruits you shall know them. Don't go by what I say. Go by what I do. Go by how I try to live my life. That's the clue. That's the key. But we every day we have to choose either love or fear. Each day we have to make that decision. Will I serve love or will I serve fear? That's what I want to leave them with.
Beautiful. Listeners, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Bible by our guest, illustrious guest, the Reverend Michael Carter. I thank you all for listening today, and I thank you, Michael, for joining us. Take good care.
Enjoyed what you've heard? Catch the members-only podcast simply by subscribing at illuminationsmedia.net.